Well, first of all, I just want to say how excited I am to be here. I'm actually an alumni of the university. Got both my undergrad and my graduate degree here. So it's pretty exciting to be back on campus. A lot's changed. It was a long time ago that I was here. But I am senior librarian at the Foundation Center. How many of you know anything about the Foundation Center? Anybody know anything about us? Anybody heard of us before? Okay, well, pardon?
I heard about you guys 5 minutes back.
Right. Well, I have to say, before I started working there, I didn't know a whole lot about the Foundation Center either. I've been a librarian there for 15 years, and over that time, I've seen a lot of changes because of technology to how we get our information out there. My background, my undergrad is in graphic design, so I have an arts background, but then I went back to library school here at the University of Maryland and have been a librarian now for 15 years. Even when I was working in graphic arts, I always worked with nonprofit organizations and tried to help in their fundraising efforts. So this organization, the Foundation Center, was a good fit for me. The Foundation Center, as you can see on the screen, was founded in 1956, over 50 some odd years ago, and it was started by private foundations that felt that information about their philanthropy needed to be more known to the public. And over time, things have really evolved with the Foundation Center, as you can imagine. We started out in one room, and now we've expanded. We started out publishing books. We are a publisher as well. We publish reference books, the Foundation Directory, and other books that has information on U.S. private foundation data. So that is what we collect at the Foundation Center. We collect information on U.S. private foundations. How many foundations do you think there are in the United States? Anybody have any ideas?
50,000.
50,000? We'll actually double that number. It's over 100,000 U.S. foundations, and that includes private foundations, but also what we call public charities that make grants. And all of this is the data that we collect at the Foundation Center. Our headquarters is actually in New York, and then I'm in the Washington, D.C. field office. We also have offices in San Francisco, Cleveland, and Atlanta. And we have affiliate locations throughout the United States, over 450 locations. In fact, the Hyattsville Public Library, right down the street from you on Adelphi Road, is an affiliate of the Foundation Center. What does that mean? Well, it means that that library will have all of the Foundation Center's resources that we produce, the books that we publish, as well as the databases that we produce. As you can imagine, over 50 years, before the internet even existed, we started out publishing books and then moved to CD-ROM technology, and now everything is online. I'd like to kind of make this very informal, so if you do have any questions as we go along, feel free to ask me. What I plan to do today is really to show you how to seek grants for the nonprofits that you're all working with today. And then we're going to take a look at our website. We have two websites, foundationcenter.org and a new website, grantspace.org, that we developed for the grant seeker. I also have to say that I read through your projects here, and to me it's very exciting to be working with such a diverse group of nonprofits doing such wonderful work. Now, what we're seeing at the Foundation Center, especially in these economic times, nonprofits such as these that you're working with are having a difficult time raising money. And one way that they can raise money is through private foundation grants. And so when a nonprofit is thinking about fundraising, they want to think about all different avenues of raising money, from individuals, maybe from doing special event programming, maybe they can produce a product through earned income and raise money. But one small niche should actually be, or could be, private foundation grants. And that's where the Foundation Center comes into play. This is where we can help nonprofits in those that are seeking grants from private foundations. And I have to say, in DC, we've almost been in existence in DC for almost 50 years. So there's definitely a need there for this information, and we really do see a broad range of nonprofit organizations. Our library is open to the public. Anybody can visit us during our operating hours, and I'll give you some other ways that you might want to convey to the nonprofits you're working with on how they can get information that they need from the Foundation Center. Are there any questions about what we do, what I do, or what the Foundation Center does?
So, what sort of direct service do you provide to nonprofits? Do the nonprofits come to you and ask you, so this is the sort of work we do, and what sort of grants are, comparable to us? Or
right.
I'm not sure how exactly it works.
Right. Well, we are a library learning center. You want to think of us as a public library. However, we're not like your normal public library, but we are open to the public. Anybody can come in during our hours of operation. There's someone at the information desk to get them started. We also teach free classes and free webinars on the grant-seeking process, on proposal writing, on fundraising planning, and other topics dealing with fundraising. We have our websites, which I'm going to show you, GrantSpace, to show you. We do give a lot of information free through the internet, through our website. We have a chat service. You can chat with us live, or send us an email with questions, and we get back to you. We do outreach programs like this one. My supervisor does a lot of the outreach programs. She comes to campuses throughout the DC area to do programs like this one. We bring a lot of groups in, special groups and special classes actually come to the Foundation Center. So we have a classroom, and we have a computer lab, and then we have our library that's open to the public.
And is the Foundation Center itself a nonprofit?
Yes, good question. I should have said from the start that we are a national nonprofit, and so we also receive grants from private foundations and do other fundraising. One of the ways that we sustain ourselves is by producing books and by selling subscriptions to our database. Okay, so the database I'm going to show you today is available to use free at any of our locations, or nonprofits can subscribe and then they have access to this data in their own office. So that's a good question about, and 50% of our support, by the way, comes from grants. Right. And the other percentage comes from, again, other fundraising avenues. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's see if we can go back to the internet here. Let's see, I'm sorry, can you explain how to get me back on so I can see it on here? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Technology, just sometimes it can drive you crazy.
It's also the system sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay,
great. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to ask as we go along. The first thing I'm going to show you today is actually our database of private foundation information. And this is the resource that the nonprofits that you are working with in your projects would want to use to look for grants. And there are two ways to search the database. There's something called power search and then guided search. The power search is a keyword search, like a Google search or Yahoo, and it searches the 9 databases that run across the bottom here. And it's a very easy tool to use. You enter a keyword like youth, and then we click search. It would search the 9 databases and show up on the right-hand side our results. Of the 9 databases, here are the results. In Grantmakers, we have over 13,500 profiles or foundations that support youth, over 443,000 grants that have something to do with helping youth. Now, if I click on to narrow my result, I click on the database that I want to go into. And let's say I want to narrow further, and I'm primarily working with the economically disadvantaged. I can then go and add another word or phrase here. And of course, then it will combine with my youth to narrow down my results, and we're down to 1,366 results. Now, over on the right-hand side where it says narrow your results, we have some additional fields to choose to narrow, and maybe I want to use grant applications accepted or not accepted. And so I can click on yes. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, there are some foundations that pre-select who they give grants to, and it really is a waste of time to submit a proposal to them unless you know somebody on the board. So one of the ways to narrow your result list is always to choose applications accepted. And now we're down to 1,064 results. And there are other ways to narrow the results as well. Notice you can narrow by physical location, grantmaker state. You can add another field of interest. You can narrow by the geographic focus of the foundation, where the funder says that it gives. We could narrow by the type of grantmaker. There are several categories of funders out there. Corporate funders, as well as what we call independent foundations, family foundations, etc. And you can narrow by total giving. So the power search is a pretty easy tool. Again, it's just like a Google search. We were told that people wanted to do a keyword search, something quick, and so we added that to our professional level, the highest level of the database. By the way, the database is updated weekly. It's very current information. And the data, you might ask yourself, well, where do we get this data? Well, the data comes directly from the private foundation itself through surveys that we send to them. It also comes from annual reports that they publish, from websites, and from what we call a 990 PF form that they file with the Internal Revenue Service. By the way, how many foundations of 100,000 plus? How many foundations have a presence on the internet? What percentage of that do you think? 75%? Any other answers? Any other guesses? 10%. 10%, excellent. 5 to 10% of foundations have a presence on the internet. Why is that? Why do you think that so few would actually have websites?
Well, I feel like grants are in really high demand, and they probably have a lot of applicants in other forms of media, so like they don't need to post it on the internet and have 1,000 people apply. They can just choose who to give their funds to in like a small amount.
Right, great. A lot of foundations pre-select who they give to, like I just mentioned, and like you said, they don't want to be inundated with proposals and applications. because they already know who they want to support. You know, Cousin Sue and Aunt Mary and Uncle Joe, they're all on the board of the foundation. They get together once or twice a year, and Cousin Sue likes to go to the opera, and Uncle Joe supports the environment. So they already know nonprofits that they want to give to. What other reasons do you think? They don't have the resources, exactly. They don't have the staff to keep up a website. Only the larger foundations in the United States actually have staff. The mid-sized to smaller foundations, again, especially the small family foundations, they don't have anyone to keep up a website. So they don't want to be known, so they don't want to have a presence on the internet. They pre-select and they don't have staff. Yes?
So you said there are over 100,000 foundations, right? That
Yes.
give money to things. So are you saying that about 10% of those 100,000 has a website? Or
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought the 100,000 was the ones that had websites, and then there's like 90% more.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, you multiply out, 5 to 10% of 100 if you're good at math,
Okay.
and you'll get a certain number that are actually on the internet. It's still a large number of funders, but it's not the majority, is the point here. Okay. So another point I'm making is if you do all your research on the internet, you're really losing out. You're not focusing in on all the possible funding possibilities by using our database, Foundation Directory Online. Okay. Now there's also what we call guided search, and the 4 tabs at the top here identify, oh yes?
This is a very college student thing to say, but if you're not researching on the internet, where else do you find these access to funds?
Well, you mean this data?
Yeah, so you just said that only 10% are online, but if you only use online sources, then you won't find those other 90%. Where and how do you find them?
Well, we hope you would come to the Foundation Center in Washington, D.C., where I'm located, or you could go down the street to the Hyattsville Public Library and use this database. This is not on the internet, it's a subscription-based tool, so you'd have to pay to have access to it at home, okay?
Kind of like you guys know how we have a bunch of resources available through the library.
Right.
You can use research for it. The University of Maryland actually pays for all of those services. So you can use the one on your university computer or use your university login. It's the same kind of idea. If the university were to pay for the foundation center
Right.
resources, then you could access it here, but they don't. So Hyattsville Public Library does. You can go use it without confusion.
Right.
Really convenient.
It's very convenient, and the staff is wonderful there, very knowledgeable about our resources. Or just get on the green line and transfer to the red line and come down to see me at the Foundation Center. We're on K Street between 16th and 17th Street. Also, I assume that most of you are not from this local area. Where are you all from? Baltimore, Philadelphia. Okay. The Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore is affiliated with us, and that's where you could go to use this resource actually for free. The Free Library of Philadelphia as well. In Germantown, you might want to go to the Rockville Public Library, which would be a little closer. And I'll explain how to find the closest location where you can go and use this resource for free. But that's a good question. And that's part of our mission. Our mission is to advance information about U.S. philanthropy in the U.S. and abroad. So one of the ways we do that is by having a library open to the public that can then come and use our resources. Now, today we're going to take a look at the guided search as well. And you see that we have GrantMaker, Company Grants, and 990s. The Search GrantMaker function is a much more targeted resource than the Power Search. And you have 15 different fields to search on. So for example, let's say for the Eco City Farms group, you were looking for support for this nonprofit organization. You could use the database. I'd encourage you to try our fields of interest to look for private foundations that support agriculture farms. And in the index, we see a lot of categories that might be appropriate. Sustainable programs, agriculture farmland, agriculture food. And notice that you can put in more than one criteria, and you're using your Boolean operators between the search terms. Here I have the OR, which expands your search. And by the way, you all have a handout that has some tips on using the database, and it explains a lot of what I'm talking about this morning. Now, along with looking for funders that support agriculture, eco-farms may want to look for funders that say they give to nonprofits in Maryland. And there are several ways to do that. We can use the geographic focus field here and look for, in fact, I'm going to do metro area. I'm going to put in District of Columbia, I'm going to put in Maryland, and I'm going to put in Virginia. So rather quickly, what I've done here is to create a search strategy on just the private foundations that support agriculture, but also give to nonprofits in the DC area. We want to exclude the ones that don't accept applications, and then we would search and we would get a result list. We get 10 results. These are 10 very targeted foundations. Our search is over here on the right-hand side. And this is called our result list. Now 10 is pretty good, but let's say we want to broaden our search a little bit, and in addition to local funders, we want to include funders that give anywhere, national. So I can go back to my search and go back into the index, and this is where I'm going to find the term national or international. Those of you who might be interested in international work. And I add the word national, which is going to broaden my search. I get a result list, and we've added quite a number. We're up to 45 results. Now the column heads are resorting features. So if I click on the total asset column, it should sort my 45, bring up the ones with the most assets at the top. Okay, and we have the large foundation, the Kellogg Foundation. Clicking on any of the hyperlinks from the result list will open to what we call profile of information. So this is quite a comprehensive profile. It gives you all of this data over here on the right-hand side, plus some tabbed information at the top. And notice that over on the left-hand side, we've added just last year. Whoops, what happened here? We added the social media function. So you can see what social media outlets the Kellogg Foundation is actually involved in. Now, why would that be helpful? Well, if you're interested in getting a grant from the Kellogg Foundation, you may want to look at some of their social media outlets, whether they are on Twitter, they have a Facebook page, maybe you want to become a friend. Because as a grant seeker, you want to learn as much as you can about a possible source of support. We also have a mapping and charting function here, which is, I think, really exciting to see a visual overview to a funder's grant making. So you can quickly see where the Kellogg Foundation actually gives grants. And because it's such a large foundation, they give almost everywhere in the United States. We could then narrow our map to just agriculture, and it then creates a new map to show you visually where the Kellogg Foundation gives its grants. We would primarily want to see over here on the eastern coast, They give grants here to the various states, District of Columbia, for example, and if I were to click on the state, it would dig deeper and deeper till eventually I could see the grant details. So the mapping technology is to me quite fascinating, and it's something you can do using the database. Now, let's see. I want to continue with this same search. Let me go back and search. And I want to look at this one in this one in Massachusetts, Towards Sustainability Foundation. This is a little smaller foundation than the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And notice that don't have quite as many tabs at the top here. But the reason I want to look at it is I want to show you quickly what a 990 PF is. I've given you a handout that highlights the 4 important pages of a 990. And I do want to mention that this is a very important research tool for private foundations, because this is the tool that's filed with the Internal Revenue Service annually, and it is public information. So it's available for anyone to access through the internet. So someone was asking me, well, what if you don't use the internet? Well, this is one resource that you can access using the internet. And you can access the 990 information through our database, but also through our websites, or through another website called GuideStar, guidestar.org. Now, why do you want to look at the 990 PF? Well, the most important page, or one of the most important pages here, is actually page 11. Page 11 is going to have the grants that have already been awarded. So the purpose in looking at the grant list is to look for grants already awarded by the funder, to see who they support and the size in grants they give. Do they give grants to organizations similar to the nonprofits that you all are working with? And most importantly, what size grants do they give? This will give you an idea of how much can be requested of the funder. So just want you to see here that this foundation gives to a lot of environmental groups, and so it might be a good source of support for the Eco City Farms group if they were looking for support. Now, the grant side of the database, oops, what did I do here? I can just go back to the internet. Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any questions while I'm bringing it back up? Yes?
Does the Foundation Center let the nonprofits have an online profile, so the foundations that are giving money can actually go to their profile and look them up?
Well, we're going to look now at the grant side of the database, and to try to answer your question indirectly, I guess, we do provide information on the grants that have already been given by private foundations. So someone could come in to see, or a funder could come in to see who's funding a certain nonprofit, who else is funding a certain nonprofit, and what size grants they are giving. The database also has information on those nonprofits access to their 990 and access to their website if you want to learn more about that. So in a way, to answer your question, we collect information on both the private foundations and the areas they support, but also grants that have already been given and awarded. Now, the next side of the database that we're going to look at today is the grant side, and on this side of our database in Search Grants, we have over 2.7 million grant records. And these are grants awarded by the larger foundations given since 2003. So I mentioned earlier that we update weekly, so we're constantly adding data to the database itself. Now on this side of the database, let's say I want to look for grants that have been given to nonprofits in Baltimore for dropout prevention. And so what we can do is actually use the subjects field, open the index, and the reason I'm using that is we don't have a term like mentoring in our index. So mentoring would be a term you would use as a keyword. However, when you start to learn the terms rather in our database, you'll see that maybe dropout prevention or tutoring or some reading or something like that would be useful for you to research. So when we go into the index and click under E for education, and I find dropout prevention, and we see 6,850 grants have been given by foundations to support dropout prevention. But I want to look for grants that have been given in Maryland and specifically Baltimore, so I can even narrow by city. Okay, so when I search, I'm actually going to see examples of grants that have been awarded to nonprofits that are physically in Baltimore that help dropout, that do something with dropout prevention. If I clicked on the hyperlink, it actually opens to the grant details. It tells me who the recipient was, where they're physically located. It does give me access to their 990 information, the filing with the Internal Revenue Service, so you can learn more about their finances, etc. A little bit about the grant itself. And we see below the grant maker information. The grant was awarded by the ABLE Foundation, which is physically in Maryland, and they give to nonprofits in Maryland. Now, if I want to learn more about the ABLE Foundation, I can toggle over to the grant maker side of the database, and then it'll open a profile for the ABLE Foundation. I can read all about how to apply for a grant, who's on their board. All of this data is available here. The application information, their program areas, where they give, the type of support they give to. Yes?
Yeah, how does a nonprofit or a foundation get into this database? Do they set up an account themselves and then edit it, or if there's new information?
How does a foundation or how does a public charity?
Either way, how does data get into it?
That's a good question. In terms of private foundation information, we send out a survey twice a year to all private foundations. We have a relationship with the IRS, So once a foundation is created and approved by the IRS, we know about it. We should know about it. I think our database is about 99.5% comprehensive, but I don't want to say that 100% because there's new foundations started all the time. But we get data from the 990 information. Once the foundation files a 990 PF, then we will know about it. Okay. We have a lot of staff in our New York office, which is where we're headquartered, that do nothing but research foundations, research the grants that they have awarded, review the 990 information to add to our database. In terms of this side of the database, the recipient information, a lot of that comes from the 990, that page 11 of the 990 PF. And some of it, we do have some foundations that file directly with us. They have electronic reporting, so they file their the grants they've awarded directly with us. Okay, and this has evolved over time, you know, to this product. And this product, by the way, this database is constantly evolving and changing, and we're constantly making changes and upgrading it, at least quarterly. Every year we're adding something new, like the social media function, the mapping function. Okay. So we see that we can toggle back over to the grant maker side of the database. And we can go through the records that we came up in our result list. Now, what's also nice about the database is you can save information to a flash drive. We do allow that. In our library, or you can email the information to yourself. Okay, so we're not proprietary in terms of this data because it's public information. We're just kind of a resource that gathered the data and made it easier for those who need to access it. There are other searches that you can do in the grant side of the database. If you know the name of the nonprofit, you can also search by recipient name, for example. Now, how many results? Let's see how many results. We had 51 results, which isn't too bad. There are ways to narrow that. You can use the fields on the right-hand side, or we could modify our search. But notice that it tells you who the funder was, who the recipient was, the year, and the size of the grant. Again, the column heads are resorting features, so you can bring up the most recent grants. 2010 is probably the most recent. We do have some 2011 grants in the database, but mostly you're going to see 2010 grants.
Interesting. I think some of these might be really neat for you guys to kind of take a look at the recipient name and then go see if they have a website, see if they've done anything similar to what IMP wants to do. It might be hard to get them on the phone, but you know what I mean, to interview them about it, but you might be able to see their website or see who's doing the same thing.
What we could try is, let's try putting in the Arthritis Foundation as a recipient name and see if we can see any grants that they have received. Now, normally I would use the index, but I'm going to just type it in. Now, this is very interesting because the Arthritis Foundation has the word foundation in its name, but it's not a private foundation. So it's important to understand that any organization can use the word foundation or fund in their name, but they're not a private foundation as recognized by the IRS. Okay.
What's the distinction?
A private foundation does not fundraise. It starts with its own endowment, and it's usually started by an individual, a group of individuals, or a family, and it has its own set of funds, and it distributes from those funds. The other type of nonprofit organization, because foundations are nonprofit, is what we call a public charity. You all are working with public charities. And this one, however, has the word foundation in its name, but again, remember, that word is not a legal term. Anybody can use that term. And here we get quite a number of grants. Now, notice what happened here, 1,787 grants, but notice where they're located, Pennsylvania, Georgia, DC, etc., all California. So what you may want to do is modify your search by physical location of the funder. And this one is in, let's see, it's in Maryland.
Yeah, there's 6 states that we'll be working with.
Okay, so if you want to, do you want to tell me the states?
Sure. Delaware, Maryland.
I think it might be, the Arthritis Foundation DC might be
Might be the one that.
yeah.
You want to look at?
But I don't know, but maybe put those in because that maybe, I don't know, I would go this route because there are 6 states that are looking.
Well, let's just limit.
That's a great way to learn about what they've done in the past too. They're really big.
Yeah, this is an excellent strategy, an excellent reason to use the database. And we're down to 16 grants. Okay, but the important information is the funders over here. Okay, and the years and the size of the grant. And we can resort by grant amount to bring up the largest grant. Now, 16 isn't a lot, and you may wonder, well, why so few? Well, this side of our database includes grants made by the top 25,000. Out of the 100,000 plus, we include grants awarded by the top 25,000 here, and grants given since 2003. Okay, so, but it's still useful information. I click on the link here to open to the grant details, and you can actually see what the grant was for. This was a $22,500 grant given by the Baltimore Community Foundation. And you can also, of course, we give you the website link here. It also tells you a little bit about the type of recipient. In this case, it's pretty clear. The Foundation Center's labeled it under arthritis, but you might see things like a museum, hospital, school, etc. under recipient type. And it's useful to search under recipient type if you don't know who your competitors are. So we would go back maybe and search under type of recipient arthritis or subject arthritis to see what other nonprofits exist that do similar work. Okay, but we could go to the next record and we would continue to go through here, and we see this is given by this funder. This might be a good funder for your group. And the same is true for the other two groups that are here. Eco City Farms, you would look for other groups that we have labeled as agriculture or farm. In your case, maybe it would be maybe a little more difficult, but maybe education services. Again, the dropout prevention might be appropriate for you all. Any other questions about this side of the database? In your case, mentoring, if you didn't know, and the grant side, by the way, is useful if you don't know what the subject terms are or what are the fields of interest terms. You can use the keyword search on the grant side, and we can put in a word like mentoring. And we could limit to, let's see, Baltimore. Is that where you're located? Baltimore. So we could do, again, city, Baltimore. And we could search somewhere in the record the word mentoring would show up, anywhere in the record. It could be in the name of the recipient, or it could be in the description of the grant itself. 194 grants. And the usefulness for you all would be to see what are the subject terms that we use. Okay, here. Because the word is probably somewhere, again, in the record. Here it is, in mentoring is in the description of the grant. You would then want to go back and search maybe on economically disadvantaged and education services, or do some other type of term, a search. Now, go to the next record, and again, this is going to tell you who supports mentoring programs in Baltimore. And by the way, the terms should show up in red that we're searching on. I'm not sure why that other one didn't show up there. But let's say you didn't know much about Big Brothers Big Sisters. It may be a group that's doing similar work to what your group is doing. We give you the website right here. We give you access to their 990 so you can learn more about them. Any questions about the grant side of the database? I like to call it searching through the back door, because you're actually learning about what's already been received rather than the grant maker side, which is what the funder has said that they're interested in supporting. The last two functions I'll just explain quickly. The search company side is basic information about the companies that have foundations or giving programs. So if you didn't know who was in your own backyard and you wanted to seek support from corporations, you could use the search company side of the database, and we could limit to companies that maybe have to do with computers. And you want to see companies that are in DC, Maryland, or Virginia. And what we're going to get here is a list of companies that have a foundation or a giving program that are in our area. And then you might want to review them in more detail to learn more about their grant making. And then if we wanted to learn about the grant making vehicles behind the funder, I could click on Grant Maker, and this funder has actually 3 different vehicles for funding this corporation. The last function of the database is the Search 990s function. Earlier, when I showed you briefly that 990 form, I had to know that the grant list is on page 11. The Search 990 function searches that form by keyword. So you can enter a keyword or phrase, and let me put in, let's say, nutrition, for example. I could limit to grants given in 2009 or 2010 or 2011, and grants given by foundations in Maryland. And this is going to give me access to the 990 information. Now, the purpose in using the Search 990 function is to get some additional grant information from some mid-sized to smaller foundations that are not in the grant side of our database. If I were to click on any of these links, like the Annie E. Casey Foundation, it would take me directly to the 990 form. Are there any questions before we look at Grant Space, our website? Okay, well, let's take a look at our website for grant seekers. And I've given you a handout today that kind of outlines what you can find on our website. This website was just posted a year ago, so we're going to have our year anniversary celebration in March. And the reason we developed this website, it took over 2 years to develop. We were told that our other website, foundationcenter.org, was too difficult to navigate. So we've moved a lot of data for grant seekers here and tried to make it as easy to navigate as possible. And the way you navigate it is through the 4 functions that run across the top. The subjects and skills are, you can enter the website based on the subject that you want to learn more about, based on the work of your nonprofit, or the skill that you want to learn. And again, let's say if we enter the website through skill and I want to learn more about proposal writing, we've developed a web page on each of those skills. Here you'll find webinars, podcasts, videos that will help those who want to learn more about developing proposals. We also have some books that we recommend on the right-hand side. We have some classes, some free online tutorials to learn about proposal writing. We have some frequently asked questions here about proposal writing and sample documents. These sample documents actually have proposals that have been funded. So you can actually see what a typical proposal might look like. Now the classroom area is where you can sign up for our courses and take a lot of our free training. So those of you who plan to become consultants and you're going to be working with nonprofits and you want to learn more about proposal writing or grant seeking or fundraising, planning, you might want to participate in some of our free webinars. And you can go to the classroom, limit our calendar to webinars, live webinars, and you'll actually see the webinar calendar, of course, for February, March, etc. And then you can register for any of the webinars that we offer. I think you can see that in the DC office where I'm located, we offer a lot of free classes. And here's our schedule for February. Today is the 9th, and we have a full day seminar going on in, at the Foundation Center on securing corporate partnerships. So we do charge for some, but most of our classes are free. And I do encourage you to take advantage of the free webinars if you can't come down to the class in person. Now the last section of Grant Space is the tools area. Now the tools area is where our knowledge base is. We used to call it our frequently asked questions, but we're now more politically correct and we call it our knowledge base now. And you can enter keyword and search our knowledge base, or you can search by categories of questions. So a nonprofit that wants to learn more about working with their board probably has questions that have been asked before, and here are the various questions. How can I find board members? Click on the question and here's the answer. Basically we give you some text and other websites, books that might be useful for learning how to find board members, for example. So there are a lot of different categories here. Those of you who are looking for scholarships, for example, to continue your education, can go to our knowledge base. We have a category for individual grant seekers and students. And we do have resources here for undergrad and grad students looking for scholarships from foundations or from other sources of support. For example, where can I find information about financial aid as a grad student? Those of you who are going on to grad school probably want to think now about looking for grant opportunities. So not only does the Foundation Center help nonprofits, we also help individual grant seekers, artists, writers, and students to look for grant for their own projects. Okay, also under the tools area, some other tools that you might find helpful. the sample documents that I mentioned. You can search the sample documents by keyword, or you can go directly to see sample proposals. And here we have sample cover letters, letters of inquiry, budgets, etc. So down the road, if your assignment or your job requires you to write a proposal to seek support, or you want to become a consultant that writes proposals, you can learn more about proposal writing from grantspace.org. Other tools. We have our online catalog. It's called the Catalog of Nonprofit Literature. If you're looking to do a literature search, you can in the nonprofit sector, the material, books, articles, etc., that has to do with nonprofits. You can actually search our database of what books we have in the collection, what articles we've indexed, on many, many different topics dealing with the nonprofit sector. Collaboration database. We have two other databases that you can search. The collaboration database, and we have an evaluation database to show social impact. These are two searchable databases for free that you can access from grantspace.org and do a bunch of various searches to look to see what are sample collaborations. Can I find any sample tools to research social impact? Okay, and that would be this particular database called Tracy. On the left-hand side, you can actually put a search in, enter by zip code to see where we may have a location near you. Does anybody want to give me their zip code? 22041. And remember, we have over 450 affiliate locations throughout the United States. And this is how you can find out where you can go to use the Foundation Center resources. Arlington County Public Library, or the Alexandria Public Library, and then of course come down to visit us at the Foundation Center in DC. Okay, and then you would click here and get additional information about their hours, where they're physically located. A few other things that I want to show you under tools. On the left-hand side, we have a free lookup tool of all foundations. Yes, our database is subscription-based, or you can use it free at any of our locations. But let's say you just need quick information, contact information, for example. You're writing a proposal and you've forgotten the K. Fritz Foundation address. You can look it up here for free using the Foundation Finder. And this is the kind of information we give you for free. Basic contact, financial data, access to their 990 PF. We have what's called PubHub. PubHub is a database of publications of private foundations, annual reports, other publications that they may produce. Again, you can search our PubHub area. There's no cost for that. And you, again, wanting to learn as much as you can about a funder, you would want to look at the PubHub area and see that K. Fritz actually produces quite a number of reports in the DC area. Okay. Lastly, want to mention the Ask Us and the Chat Now service. If you have a question, feel free to fill in the Ask Us area and email us questions, or you can chat with a librarian live. I do participate in the Chat Now service, so I'd be happy to help you answer your questions during the hours that the chat service is available. Also, and it's quite, I think, a quite large amount of time, Monday through Wednesday, 9:30 to 8, Thursday and Friday, 9:30 to 4:30. You'll find somebody online to chat with. Okay. Now, the Multimedia tab at the top is where you can find our recorded webinars. So if you don't have time to come to the library, you don't have time to participate in a live webinar, I like to say there's no excuse now for getting this information, because we do provide it for you on our website, GrantSpace, as a recorded version. So you can learn about grant seeking, proposal writing, fundraising, etc.